I had just gotten back from a 7-month deployment in Guam. Long days, short nights, 20-hour shifts. You know the usual. But honestly, I didn't mind it. That's the job. I'm a logistics officer in the Navy, and I've been doing this long enough to know how to run a tight operation, whether that's moving equipment or coordinating people across oceans. That part of life made sense. Family, though, that's where things always got a little messy. I grew up in Virginia, small-town vibes, blue-collar everything. My dad was a Marine, the old-school wake up at 4 a.m., wax the car kind. He raised me like I was one of the guys, but with extra expectations because I was the responsible one. That stuck. Especially after he died. Pancreatic cancer doesn't wait for anyone. He went fast, and I didn't have time to grieve before the weight of the whole damn family landed on my shoulders. My mom, Donna, wasn't exactly helpless, but let's just say she perfected the art of emotional management. Subtle guilt trips were her love language. And my little sister, Vanessa, 5 years younger, charming in public, a professional victim in private. She's the kind of person who always needs help, but never enough to fix her life. Just enough to keep your wallet open. I'd been sending money home since my 2nd year in the Navy. Started small, covering Chloe's school supplies. Chloe being Vanessa's daughter, then helping with utilities, then groceries. Then somehow, I was paying for home repairs on a house I didn't live in. And every time I questioned it, I got the same line, "We're just trying to get by, Maddie." You're the only one who really made it. That's the thing about being the one who made it. Everyone assumes you owe them for it. Still, I thought I was doing the right thing. Especially for Chloe. That kid has a bright future, and if a few $100 a month meant she had stability, then fine. I could live with that. This time, though, I was excited. For once, I was coming home not because someone needed money or because something had gone wrong. I just wanted to surprise them. No agenda. Just me, a dozen overpriced pastries from my favorite bakery in Norfolk, and a smile. I didn't tell anyone I was flying in early. Originally, I was supposed to return Friday evening, but our schedule wrapped up sooner than expected. So I hopped on an earlier flight, grabbed my rental, and drove straight to the house I paid for, but didn't live in. It's a 2-story colonial on 3 acres outside Williamsburg. Quiet, peaceful, and apparently more useful to everyone else than it ever was to me. I hadn't even pulled into the driveway before spotting 5 cars already there. Mom's old Camry, Vanessa's Civic, a white Lexus I didn't recognize, and a couple of SUVs with out-of-state plates. I figured maybe Chloe had friends over, or maybe someone had just dropped by. It wouldn't be the first time someone used my house without asking. I got out of the car, still holding the bakery bag, and made my way to the front door. I had a key, obviously, and since I didn't want to walk in shouting surprise like a sitcom character, I opened the door quietly and stepped inside. That's when I heard the laughter. It was coming from the living room. Full-blown party vibes, music, clinking glasses, someone yelling cheers followed by more laughter. I stayed in the hallway just out of sight and listened. Maybe 5 seconds later, I heard Vanessa's voice. "She's such a stupid Navy puppet, I swear." And then my mom's voice joined in. "Don't say that too loud, or she'll think she has a brain." Laughter. Loud, ugly, the kind that comes from people who think they're safe, people who think the one they're mocking isn't within earshot. And that's when another voice, maybe one of Vanessa's friends, chimed in. "Has she agreed to pay for the wedding yet?" "Oh, she will," Vanessa said, like it was already settled. "We just have to keep playing the family card. Guilt works every time. I'm thinking 15 grand. Maybe more if we say it's for Chloe." More laughter. Glasses clinking. Someone actually toasted. "To stupid relatives with money." I stood there frozen. My hand tightening around the bakery bag until the paper crinkled. Not one person in that room said, "Hey, maybe that's too far." Not one. It hit me harder than I expected. Not because they called me stupid. I've been called worse by better people. But because these were the same people I was breaking my back for. The people I'd transferred money to at 2 a.m. without blinking. the ones I'd defended when others told me I was being used. And here they were proving everyone else right. You ever have one of those moments where everything you've been ignoring suddenly snaps into focus? That was it for me. Every red flag, every subtle dig, every small favor, it all lined up like dominoes. And this was the shove that knocked them down. By the way, if you've ever dealt with this kind of family mess, or had a moment where you realized you were being used, leave a comment. I want to hear your story. And if you're into real, no BS family revenge stories, hit subscribe. Trust me, it gets better or worse depending on who you're rooting for. I backed out of the hallway, still unnoticed, and walked straight to my car. The pastries went untouched in the passenger seat. For a second, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. And I was done being predictable. I sat in the car for a long minute, with the engine running, staring at the front door like it might open on its own, and pretend none of that just happened. It didn't. The laughter inside kept going. Music got louder. Someone turned it up, like they were settling in for a long night. I pulled out of the driveway and drove until I hit the first gas station off the highway. I didn't need gas. I needed space. I parked, shut off the engine, and just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. What bothered me most wasn't the insult. I'd spent years in the Navy. Being called stupid wasn't new. What bothered me was how organized it all sounded, like they'd been doing this for a while, like I wasn't a person to them anymore. I was a plan. I opened my banking app without really thinking about it, not because I expected to find anything new, but because muscle memory kicked in. I checked balances the way some people check social media when they're stressed. That's when I noticed something I'd brushed off before. A small charge I didn't recognize. Then another, not huge, $200 here, $350 there, the kind of amounts you don't lose sleep over when your paycheck hits like clockwork. I scrolled further back. The charges weren't random, they were spaced out. Always right after I deployed. Always when I was out of the country. Always under descriptions that sounded normal enough to ignore. Utilities. Maintenance. Miscellaneous services. I laughed once, short and sharp. Of course! Vanessa had asked me years ago if she could help manage things while I was deployed. I'd signed a limited power of attorney so she could deal with bills on the house if something urgent came up. It was supposed to be temporary. It just never ended. Every time I thought about revoking it, there was a reason not to. Mom needed help. Chloe needed something for school. Vanessa was going through a rough patch. There was always a rough patch. I closed the app and leaned my head back against the seat. I thought about every time I'd ignored that tight feeling in my chest when Vanessa called. Every time she'd start with, I hate to ask, but, and somehow end with my bank balance a little lighter and my conscience a little heavier. I drove again, this time back toward Norfolk, not the house. I wasn't ready to be around anyone yet. When I got home to my apartment, I kicked off my shoes, dropped my bag by the door, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I pulled my credit report. I told myself it was just to be thorough. Just a routine check. The kind of thing a responsible adult does. That lie lasted about 3 seconds. There it was. A credit card I didn't recognize. Opened 8 months ago. Balance just under $5,000. Payments made on time just enough to avoid attention. Another account, smaller limit, different bank. I felt my stomach drop, but my head stayed weirdly clear. This wasn't confusion anymore. It was confirmation. I checked the dates. Both accounts were opened while I was overseas. Both used my information. Both had addresses listed that matched my mom's house. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I actually felt calm, which scared me a little. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't family drama. This was identity theft. Plain and simple, I called the first bank. I didn't mention my sister. I didn't accuse anyone. I just asked questions. Dates. Applications. Signatures. The representative walked me through the details like this was a normal Tuesday. Because for her it was. When she emailed me copies of the applications, I didn't even need a magnifying glass. The signature was sloppy rushed, someone trying to copy my name without caring if it matched. It didn't. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the screen. I thought about my dad for a second, about how he used to say loyalty didn't mean letting people walk over you. I wondered what he'd say now if he could see how far this had gone. I made another call. This one was to legal services on base, not to file anything yet. Just to ask what my options were if someone had opened accounts in my name without permission. The answer was straightforward. Too straightforward. Document everything, freeze credit, file a report, decide how far you want to take it. How far? I looked around my quiet apartment. No noise, no laughter, no one raising a glass at my expense. And for the first time that night, I felt something close to clarity. I froze my credit. Took 15 minutes. Then I changed every password I could think of. Banking, email, utilities, anything tied to my name. I didn't notify anyone. I didn't owe them an explanation. My phone buzzed while I was mid-password reset. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. She called again. Then my mom. Then Vanessa again. I let it ring. I wasn't ready to hear whatever excuse they'd rehearsed. Instead, I opened a folder on my laptop and started saving everything. Statements, emails, screenshots, dates, times, notes. If this was going to turn into something bigger, I wanted facts, not feelings. Somewhere in the middle of it, I realized how much energy I'd spent over the years trying to keep the peace. Paying for it, literally. I'd told myself it was easier to send money than argue. Easier to help than explain why I couldn't. Easier to stay quiet than be called selfish. Turns out silence was expensive. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. Mom, where are you, Vanessa? Why aren't you answering, Mom? We need to talk. I set the phone face down on the table and kept typing. For once, I wasn't in a hurry to respond. For once, I wasn't trying to smooth anything over. They thought I was their backup plan, their safety net, their walking ATM in uniform. They had no idea I'd just stopped playing that role. I woke up the next morning to another text from Vanessa. Vanessa, hey, sorry if I said anything weird last night. We were just messing around. Everyone had a little too much wine. Can you call me? I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, wondering how you spin calling your sister a stupid Navy puppet into a joke. Must have taken a lot of wine for that to sound clever. I slid the phone across the counter and let it sit face down again. By noon, I was back at my laptop. I wasn't playing detective. I already had my answers. Now it was about control. Who had access to what? Where were the holes in my accounts? What else had I let them get their hands on while telling myself it was temporary? I remembered something when I bought the house. I gave my mom a spare key. It felt harmless at the time. She looked so grateful, so proud. This is still home, she said, as if that somehow made it okay to just walk in whenever she wanted. Then there was Vanessa. She never asked for a key. She just had one. I never figured out when she made a copy. Probably while house-sitting just for a weekend a couple years ago. I didn't question it then. I figured family was supposed to have access. That's what made it feel like family. Now it felt more like I'd accidentally handed my bank account and real estate over to a con artist and her manager. I called a locksmith and scheduled a full rekeying for the end of the week. All doors, garage, everything. I didn't care if it cost $500. It was cheaper than letting this keep going. That afternoon, I opened Facebook. Not to scroll, just curiosity, morbid curiosity. Right there in bold status update glory was Vanessa's post-engagement party for me and Jason. This Saturday, 2 p.m. at Mom's place, aka Maddie's house. LOL. Come celebrate with us. Dress nice. We're going big. She tagged me. Actually tagged me. Like I was in on it. The comments section was full of heart emojis and So happy for you guys, and we'll be there. I counted over 40 people, including Jason's parents, a bunch of Vanessa's friends from high school, and even someone who used to babysit Chloe years ago. There it was in real time. They weren't ashamed. They weren't hiding it. They were showing off. The house was now Mom's place, apparently. They were using it for a catered engagement party with at least 40 people, and I hadn't been invited. Not properly, not by phone, not even by direct message. Just tagged like an afterthought. And I was expected to pay for all of it. I scrolled down. Vanessa had even posted a mood board, white and gold decorations, a canopy tent for the backyard, catering details, a mock-up of a custom cake with initials carved into edible fondant. There were screenshots of flower orders and string light ideas, a whole Pinterest-style setup. And not a single mention of a budget. Because of course there wasn't one. In their minds, the budget had a name. Me. I leaned back in my chair and laughed once. It wasn't funny, but I couldn't help it. It was the boldness of it all. They weren't even pretending to care anymore. I'd been reduced to a funding source in their personal event planner app. My phone buzzed again. Mom, don't forget about Saturday. It's going to be beautiful. I know you're busy, but try to be there if you can. Vanessa would love to see you. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent one message to the locksmith. Can we move up the appointment to Friday evening? He replied within 10 minutes. Absolutely. See you at 7 p.m. Perfect. Now, it wasn't just about locking them out physically. It was about cutting the pattern at its source. No more spare keys, no more unspoken access, no more assuming Maddie would smile, nod, and cover the bill. I didn't announce anything. That's the thing about people who take advantage of you. They count on you not making a scene. They expect silence. They expect guilt. They expect you to feel so bad about being angry that you back down before they even have to lie. I wasn't going to give them that luxury. The rest of that week was business as usual on their end. Vanessa posted about a custom photo backdrop. My mom shared an old baby picture of her and my dad with the caption, "He would have been so proud of his little girl getting engaged. Touching." If you didn't know, they were doing it inside a house they didn't own and didn't pay for. By Friday afternoon, I had everything ready. I left work early, stopped by the grocery store to grab a few basic supplies for the weekend, and then drove out to the house. The driveway was already cleaner than I remembered. Someone had trimmed the hedges. The porch had string lights half hung already. They'd clearly been there earlier in the day setting up. I checked the camera system I'd installed last year. Still active, still connected to my phone. All angles covered front door, back door, driveway, interior hallway. I'd set it up when I was deployed overseas so I could keep an eye on the property. Funny how it ended up being for something else entirely. At 7 p.m. sharp, the locksmith arrived. His name was Jericho, a guy in his 40s with a shaved head and a thick Boston accent. Didn't ask questions, just smiled and said, "Looks like someone's drawing a line." I nodded. Something like that. He changed all 6 locks in under an hour, gave me 3 new keys. No more spares floating around. No more copy-paste trust. When he left, I walked around the house slowly. The decorations were mostly half done. A few floral centerpieces sat in boxes by the kitchen. The backyard had folding chairs stacked neatly next to a tent frame. I opened a couple bags labeled reserved seating and guest book station. They'd planned every little detail. I didn't touch any of it. Not yet. I wasn't there to destroy anything. Not yet. The morning of the engagement party started the same as any other Saturday. I made coffee, fed my dog, scrolled the news, and watched the security feed from my phone while sitting on the couch in sweatpants. At 9:07 a.m., the first car rolled up the driveway. Mom's gray Camry. She got out holding a box, probably cupcakes or decorations, then reached into her purse for the house key she didn't know was now useless. She tried the door once, then twice. Her brow creased. She looked around like maybe someone had secretly changed the laws of physics overnight. Then she tried the back door. No luck there either. I zoomed in on the camera feed. Her face moved through the usual confusion, cycle-mild annoyance, followed by suspicion, then full-blown disbelief. It was almost entertaining. She pulled out her phone and started tapping furiously. A minute later, my phone lit up. "Mom, Maddie, something's wrong with the doors. Keys aren't working. Did you change the locks?" I didn't reply. At 9:20, Vanessa's Civic showed up. She hopped out like she owned the place, wearing a white sundress and a glittery sash that said bride-to-be. Jason followed behind her, carrying a speaker and a folding table. They smiled and waved at my mom until they realized she wasn't inside. The three of them huddled on the porch. I muted the camera audio, but I didn't need to hear what was said. The body language said enough. Mom was annoyed. Vanessa looked confused, then furious. Jason seemed like he wanted to be anywhere else. Another text. "Vanessa, why are the doors locked? Mom says the keys don't work. Did you forget to tell us something?" A fourth car pulled up, then a fifth. The guests started arriving, dressed up and carrying gifts trays of food boxes of decorations. One woman had a flower crown. Another man wore a bow tie like he thought he was attending an upscale brunch. One by one, they walked up to the porch and froze. No music, no decorations, no open door. Just three people panicking and pretending everything was fine. At 10:15, I finally responded. "Me. Yeah, I changed the locks yesterday." It took 10 seconds for the first call to come in. "Mom." I let it ring. Then Vanessa, ignored again. Then Jason, probably sent by the others. I rejected the call before the first ring finished. The texts came next, flying in like they were late to a fire drill. "Mom. Why would you do this, Vanessa? You're ruining everything. What the hell is wrong with you, Mom? All our stuff is inside. The caterer's coming at noon, Vanessa. You owe me an explanation right now." I didn't owe them anything. By 11 a.m., half the driveway was full. Guests were wandering around confused. People were taking phone calls, pacing, checking the address, like they might have gotten it wrong. I watched them through the lens of the cameras sipping coffee. Then I texted one more time. "Me. Everything inside has been bagged and moved to the side of the house. Decoration supplies all of it. You can pick it up any time before 2. I'd stayed late the night before, packing it all carefully. I wasn't trying to destroy anything. I just didn't want them claiming I'd stolen or damaged their stuff. I even labeled the bags. Centerpieces, table settings, candles. I could have dumped it in the trash and slept great, but I wanted this to be clean. At 11:15, they discovered the bags. Vanessa stormed to the side of the house like she was about to defuse a bomb. She yanked one, opened, stared at it, and turned around, screaming something at Jason. He didn't scream back. He just rubbed his face like a man regretting life choices. Another group of guests had gathered near the cars. Some started leaving. Others looked annoyed. A few were taking pictures of the chaos like they planned to post about it later. By 11:45, the party was officially dead. No one was laughing. The beautiful backyard wedding preview had turned into an awkward tailgate of arguments and melted fruit trays. My phone rang again. "Vanessa." This time I answered. "Are you serious right now?" she hissed before I could say a word. "You changed the locks and didn't tell anyone. You embarrassed us in front of everyone." "I didn't invite anyone," I said calmly. "This was supposed to be my day. It was supposed to be my house, but that didn't stop you. You could have told me you were planning this. We could have talked about it." I almost laughed. Talked about it like when you called me a stupid Navy puppet, or when you planned to squeeze 15 grand out of me for a wedding I didn't even know was happening. Silence. "You think I didn't hear that?" I continued. "I was standing in the hallway last week while you all toasted to how dumb I am. So no, we're not talking this out. You can pick up your stuff and get off my property." "You're unbelievable," she snapped. "Do you know how bad this looks? Everyone saw this. Good." Let them. I ended the call. At 12:10, the caterer showed up. 2 vans, staff in uniforms. They unloaded nothing. After a heated conversation with Vanessa, they packed back up and left. By 12:30, most of the guests were gone. The driveway cleared out like it had been evacuated. The only ones left were Vanessa, my mom, and Jason. He sat on the porch step, elbows on his knees, like he was rethinking the entire engagement. Vanessa paced. Mom shouted into her phone. Neither of them tried the doors again. I kept watching, calm as ever. They had finally run into a version of me that didn't just pay and stay quiet. A version that saw everything clearly and decided enough was enough. Let them stand there. Let them feel the sting of their own entitlement echoing back at them through a locked door. The next few days were strangely quiet. No phone calls, no surprise visits. Just silence, the kind of silence I hadn't had in years. At first, it felt like walking through a minefield that hadn't exploded yet. I kept waiting for the next dramatic voicemail or a guilt-tripping text from Mom, but nothing came. Not on Sunday, not on Monday, not even a passive-aggressive email. They were regrouping. I knew the pattern. Vanessa didn't do confrontation when she lost control. She'd go quiet until she thought the heat died down, then circle back like nothing had happened, acting wounded and confused. Mom would take the same route, except she'd lead with a half-hearted apology, followed by, "But you have to understand." I didn't need to understand anymore. Instead, I started digging deeper. My deployment was coming up in 3 months, another 6-month tour. That's part of the job. But after everything that happened, I wasn't about to leave loose ends behind. I'd done that too many times before, left my life in the hands of people who saw me as a paycheck in uniform. I printed every bank statement from the last 5 years. I didn't do it out of paranoia. I did it because I'd spent too long not asking questions, too long brushing off strange expenses and emergency transfers because it was family. I built a spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm that person. I needed it in black and white. Over one 5-year period, I had given or been tricked into giving over $43,000 to various emergencies, surprises, gifts, and just until next paycheck transfers. It didn't hit me at all at once. It hit in waves. Rent money for Vanessa, that was over $9,000. Car repairs for Mom, that turned out to be a new set of living room furniture. Almost $4,000. The surprise vacation to help Chloe see the world, another $6,000 taken from my savings with promises to absolutely pay you back after the tax refund. Spoiler alert, no one paid me back. One line on the spreadsheet made me stop cold. $1,250. Septinity 22. Transferred to Aunt Rachel. Dental emergency. Aunt Rachel has dentures, full set. She's had them since 2015, so either she suddenly grew new teeth or I paid for her to go on a cruise. I didn't even get a thank you card. I took a picture of the spreadsheet on my phone and stared at it for a long time. The total wasn't even the most painful part. It was the way it all looked when laid out in rows and columns. This wasn't generosity. This was long-term extraction. They hadn't just taken money, they'd built a system. Any time I deployed, the messages would start. Carefully spaced out, never too greedy at once. A little here, a little there. The guilt came in soft waves. We miss you. It's so hard without you, just until we get back on our feet. It was emotional blackmail disguised as family bonding. I thought about all the nights I'd sat in a bunk halfway across the world looking at photos they sent of holiday dinners, backyard cookouts, birthday parties, smiling faces lit by string lights. Meanwhile, I was wiring money back home between meetings with my CO, not realizing I was the uninvited sponsor of the event. I let that sit for a while. Then I opened my email and started writing something I never thought I'd have to. Subject power of attorney termination. To Legal Services, NAS, Norfolk. Within 24 hours, I had the documents signed and filed. The limited POA I'd given Vanessa was now void. She no longer had the right to sign anything, pay anything, or access any of my accounts. I also removed my mom's name from the trusted contacts list at my bank. Then I walked into the bank in person and froze all joint access to the house account. I'd set up a secondary account years ago for house-related expenses, utilities, maintenance, stuff like that. It was how Vanessa and my mom had been paying for their little get-togethers, streaming subscriptions, and accidental furniture orders. Not anymore. The bank manager looked at me and said, "Anything else you'd like to secure today, Lieutenant?" I smiled. "That'll do it for now." As I walked out of the building, something shifted in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, just relief. Like I'd finally put down a backpack I'd been carrying for a decade and hadn't noticed the weight until now. I didn't need revenge. I needed freedom. And the more I cut off the financial lifelines, the more I saw how much they'd depended on me, not just for money, but for structure. I'd been the one with the clean credit, the reliable paycheck, the problem-solving brain they leaned on while making messes they had no intention of cleaning up. Without me, they were going to have to figure things out like everyone else. That night, I got my first phone call in days. It was Chloe. "Hey, Aunt Maddie," she said, voice small. "I heard you're mad." I took a breath. Chloe was 11. She didn't belong in this mess. "I'm not mad at you, sweetie," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." She paused. "Mom says you're being selfish." Of course she did. Sometimes when people get used to someone always helping, they don't know how to act when that help stops, I said. "That's not your fault." Chloe was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the one question I wasn't ready for. "Does this mean we're not family anymore?" My chest tightened. "We're always family," I said. "But sometimes even with family, you have to say no when something isn't fair." She sniffled. "Okay." We talked a little more about School Her Cat and a science project she was working on. I told her I was proud of her. Then we hung up, and I stared at the wall for a long time. That phone call hurt more than any of the others. Because Chloe wasn't part of the system, but she was living in it, and she was starting to see the cracks. The silence returned after that. But this time, I didn't feel anxious. I felt ready. A week passed then, too. Not a peep from Vanessa or my mom. No guilt texts. No surprise visits. Not even a "can we talk" message. The silence wasn't a truce. It was a trap. They thought they were giving me time to calm down to get past the drama, so I'd do what I always did, pretend it didn't happen, quietly fix whatever was broken, and go back to being their reliable Navy ATM with a heart of gold and a brain on autopilot. They didn't understand this version of me. This version wasn't tired. This version was focused. It started with the house. I contacted a property management company that specialized in short-term vacation rentals for military families and traveling professionals. I knew the area had solid demand, quiet, close to hiking trails near a lake, just far enough from the city to feel peaceful, but not isolated. They did a walkthrough, ran the numbers, and sent me a breakdown. Estimated monthly income between $2,100 and $2,600. More during summer. That was more than enough to cover my mortgage and keep the place from becoming a family free-for-all again. I signed the agreement that same week. Locks were changed again. Cleaning crew brought in. Guest policies locked tight. No unapproved access. Every visitor verified, every expense logged. The house was no longer a family getaway. It was a professionally managed property. And it was mine. I got the first reservation notice within 4 days. Meanwhile, back at my apartment in Norfolk, life stayed quiet. I got up early, went on runs with my dog, showed up for work on time, and didn't answer a single phone call from numbers I recognized as the drama line. It felt so good, it was suspicious. Then, one Thursday night, just past 8 p.m., someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 knocks. Not pounding, not gentle, intentional. I didn't need to check the peephole. I already knew. I opened it slowly. Vanessa stood there, in a beige coat, heels, too fancy for a casual drop-by. and a full face of makeup that looked like it had been applied to perform an apology. Behind her was our mom. No coat, just her favorite fleece sweater, and that familiar expression halfway between concern and disapproval, like I was both a wounded animal and a stubborn disappointment. No one said anything at first. Then Vanessa smiled like we were picking up where we left off last year. "Hey, we were in the neighborhood." I leaned on the doorframe. "Norfolk's 2 hours away. That's a long neighborhood." She didn't flinch. "We thought maybe it was time to talk." Mom chimed in. "Sweetheart, can we come in?" I didn't move. "No, but we can talk right here." That threw them. Vanessa glanced at Mom like she expected backup. Mom's face tightened. "Madeline, this has gone far enough," she said softly. "You've made your point. Have I? You've shut everyone out, blocked us, humiliated us." Interesting choice of words. "You mean like when you all stood in my house and called me a stupid Navy puppet while planning how to milk me for $15,000? Mom's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Vanessa tried instead. That was taken out of context. I stared at her. I was the context. You were talking about me in my house on my dime. She straightened. "Okay, look, we were frustrated. You're always gone, you act like you're better than everyone else, and, yeah, sometimes we joke around. That's what families do." "No. What families do is respect each other. What you did was use me." "We were struggling," Mom added. "You have no idea how hard it's been with Dad gone." I blinked. "Don't," I said. "Do not bring Dad into this." Vanessa looked like she wanted to interrupt, but I held up a hand. "You want honesty. Here it is. I was your safety net, your backup plan, your piggy bank, and your emotional dumping ground. And I was fine with it for a while, because I thought that's what love looked like. Turns out it was just manipulation wrapped in family dinners and guilt. I called you crying because I didn't know what else to do." Vanessa said, her voice rising. "You don't understand what it's like being a single mom. Then ask for help. Don't lie. Don't call me stupid behind my back while cashing the checks. You don't get to insult me and expect more money at the same time." She went quiet. Finally, Mom stepped in again. "We just want things to go back to normal. There is no normal. There's just me moving on, and you two trying to pretend none of this happened. Maddie, we're your family. You are. And that's what makes it worse." I didn't shout. I didn't slam the door. I just stood there looking at them. For once, they had no script, no counteroffer, no fallback plan. Finally, Vanessa broke the silence. "So that's it, you're cutting us off." I exhaled slowly. "I'm cutting off the version of you that saw me as a wallet with dog tags." Vanessa's face crumbled, but I didn't let it sway me. Mom reached out like she wanted to touch my arm. I stepped back. "You should go." They hesitated, probably hoping I'd blink cave soften like always. But I didn't. They turned and walked down the hallway, heels clicking against the floor. I didn't watch them leave. I just closed the door. That night, I slept better than I had in years. 2 weeks later, my cousin Theo messaged me on Instagram. It was short, just one line. "Heard you're not talking to anyone anymore. You okay?" I stared at it for a minute before replying. Theo had always been neutral, the Switzerland of our family, never stirred the pot, never took sides. But he also never asked me for anything. We hadn't talked much over the years, but I remembered he showed up at my Navy commissioning ceremony when almost no one else did. "I'm fine. Just finally setting some boundaries." He hearted the message, then added, "Proud of you. They're freaking out, but it's long overdue." That message meant more than he probably knew. Not because it was dramatic or emotional, but because it was so simple and clear. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Someone else in the family saw what was happening, even if he wasn't saying it out loud at the Sunday dinners. And just like that, I realized I wasn't as alone as I thought. That weekend, I did something completely mundane that felt oddly emotional. I bought new furniture for my apartment. A couch, a small dining table, 2 chairs that actually matched. Nothing fancy, but I paid for it with my own money. Money I didn't send to patch up someone else's irresponsibility. As I assembled the last chair and put the Allen wrench down, I sat back and looked around the room. For the first time, it actually felt like mine, not a temporary holding space between deployments, not a crash pad for when my family was done using my real house. Just mine. And it didn't feel empty, it felt earned. A few days later, I got a voicemail from my old neighbor out near the country house. Mrs. Dunbar in her 70s ran the neighborhood watch before neighborhood watches were even a thing. Her voice was polite but pointed. "Hi, Maddie. I just wanted to let you know there were 2 women trying to get into your house last night around 8. They said they were family, but when I told them the property was being rented and they weren't on any list, they left pretty quick. Thought you should know." I played it again. 2 women, 8 o'clock. Vanessa and Mom. They'd tried to sneak in. It didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how unsurprised I felt. They were never going to respect boundaries they didn't benefit from. That was the whole dynamic. The second I stopped enabling it, they tried to force it back into place. I texted the property manager. "Me, ai. 2 women tried to access the house last night. Probably family, not approved guests. Manager? Got it. Cameras caught them. Already flagged. Want us to file anything? Me not yet. Just keep the footage in case." I wasn't interested in calling the cops on my own mother. But I also wasn't going to pretend it didn't happen. That's the part no one tells you about cutting toxic people out of your life. It doesn't always feel triumphant. Sometimes it feels like grief in slow motion, like mourning people who are still alive but refuse to show up in a version of themselves that's safe to be around. I'd spent years believing that love meant sacrifice and family meant unconditional giving. But love without respect is just manipulation. And unconditional giving without boundaries, that's just setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. I was done being a fire. That week something else happened. An old friend from my first Navy assignment reached out. Sam, a guy I hadn't seen in years, but who used to call me Mad Dog Maddie back when we were 24 and thought we were invincible. We grabbed coffee, caught up. He'd left the Navy 2 years prior and started working in veteran transition services, helping enlisted folks find jobs after service. "You ever think about what's next?" he asked. Like after your next deployment, I hadn't. Not really. I'd been so focused on surviving the mess behind me that I hadn't looked ahead. "I've got 3 years left before I hit 20, I said. "I'll probably do my full 20. Then, maybe come back and breathe for once." He nodded. "You ever thought about mentoring?" I blinked. "Like officially?" He laughed. "You've basically mentored half your junior officers already. Might as well get paid for it. The work's steady, and you don't have to pretend to be nice to freeloading relatives." We both cracked up, loud enough to turn heads. It felt good to laugh with someone who didn't want anything from me except my time, and maybe a second round of coffee. That night I sat down at my laptop and opened a blank document. For the first time in a while, I wasn't writing a budget or a resignation email. I just started typing things I will never apologize for again. It became a list. Otzi, saying no, asking for respect, not paying for other people's bad decisions, being proud of my career, changing the locks, choosing peace, protecting my future. By the time I hit the last bullet, I realized something. I hadn't just cut off toxic family members. I'd redefined who I was without their noise in my head. No more guilt for having boundaries. No more shame about money I'd earned. No more letting blood is thicker than water be the excuse for drowning. It was strange. I used to think that pulling away from family would leave a hole. But what it really did was create space for healthier connections, for real conversations, and for a version of me that had been waiting patiently under all the people-pleasing. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about clarity. The text came in on a Tuesday morning. Just one sentence, One more attempt to pull me back into the role I'd finally abandoned. Vanessa and Jason's big day is officially set. No punctuation beyond the emoji, no preamble. Just a group text from Mom fired off like nothing had ever happened between us. Like they hadn't stood in my house and mocked me like I was a living punchline. Like they hadn't tried and failed to manipulate me into funding their fantasy. The group thread included a few aunts' cousins, and even my old high school coach for some reason. Probably for optics. Make it look like the family was coming together. No one replied for a full hour. Then one cousin sent congrats, and another dropped a generic happy for them. I left it on read. 10 minutes later, my personal text buzzed. Mom. Hi, sweetheart. I know things have been tense, but this is such an exciting time. I really hope we can all come together for Vanessa. She's your only sister. And there it was, that subtle blend of passive guilt and soft manipulation. The formula hadn't changed. The tone was sweet. The goal was pressure. The assumption was that I'd come around, that I'd snap back into good daughter, dependable sister mode and ask the question they were all waiting for. How can I help? Except this time, I didn't. I didn't answer at all. 2 days later, I got another message. This one more pointed. Mom Vanessa was hoping you could help with the wedding. She's under a lot of stress trying to budget everything. Even just covering part of it would mean so much. That was the moment I knew they hadn't learned a thing. Not after everything, not after the confrontation, not after the locks were changed, the accounts secured the spreadsheet of betrayal laid bare. They still saw me as the same person, the one who didn't ask questions, the one who paid and thanked them for the privilege. And now they wanted me to finance a wedding for a couple who hadn't spoken a word to me in months, except to insult me behind my back. I didn't even know Jason's last name. I didn't respond. The next day, Vanessa messaged me directly. Vanessa, look, I know there's been some stuff, but I really want you to be part of this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I was thinking maybe you could help cover the catering. It's around $8,000, but you wouldn't have to do the whole thing. Just whatever you can. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask how I was doing. She just asked for money, like nothing had happened. I sat on my couch and stared at my phone. It would have been laughable if it weren't so grotesque. $8,000, after calling me a stupid Navy puppet, after years of quietly bleeding me dry. Now they wanted me to pay for the food that would feed the same people who'd cheered them on while mocking me. There was no apology, no accountability, just the assumption that I'd do what I'd always done. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have the words. I had plenty, but because I knew replying would invite more spin, more excuses. More, we didn't mean it, gaslighting. I didn't need to justify my silence anymore. The next day, another text came in. Mom, we've already spoken to the caterer. Vanessa's putting down a small deposit. If you could just Venmo whatever you can manage, it would help so much. We know you're doing well. We know you're doing well. That line hit harder than they probably intended. They didn't respect me. They envied me. And they resented me for building a life that didn't revolve around their mess. They hadn't reached out to reconnect. They were laying a financial trap dressed up like a family celebration. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened Venmo and blocked both of them. Then I did the same with PayPal, Zelle, Cash App, and every other platform they might use. I wasn't going to leave any doors cracked open. Then I sat down and wrote a short email. To Mom, Vanessa, subject stop. I've made my boundaries clear. I'm not paying for the wedding. I'm not contributing financially in any way. Stop contacting me with requests for money. If you continue, I will take further action to protect myself. Maddie. I hit send and felt the kind of peace you only get from shutting a door that's been slamming in your face for years. There was no reply. For 3 days. Then, at 11:42 p.m., on a Friday night, my phone lit up with a final Hail Mary. Vanessa, wow, so that's it. After everything we've been through, you can't even help your sister have one good day in her life. I hope your perfect little Navy world keeps you warm at night. Because one day you'll look around and realize you have no one left. I deleted the message and blocked her number. I didn't even feel angry anymore, just sad that it had come to this. Because the truth is, I did want to be there when my sister got married. I wanted to stand beside her, laugh with her, support her. But that version of us didn't exist. It never really had. What existed was a pattern, a system, one where love meant leverage and kindness was currency. And I was done paying. The wedding would happen, with or without me. They'd spin whatever story they needed to justify my absence, probably something about me being too busy with work or always overseas. But I knew the truth, and now so did they. It rained the day Vanessa and Jason got married. Not a soft, poetic drizzle. A full-on downpour, sheets of water, thunder cracking hard enough to shake windows. I watched it from my apartment, coffee in hand, dog curled up next to me, news playing in the background, but muted. I already knew what day it was. The photos started hitting Facebook by mid-afternoon. A small church in the suburbs, white folding chairs and muddy grass. Tents set up last minute. Vanessa, in a dress that looked like it cost more than my last car, standing next to Jason with that frozen smile that said everything was fine, even when it wasn't. I didn't click like. I didn't comment. I didn't text anyone. I just watched the images roll by, post after post from people I hadn't spoken to in years, tagging each other in shots they probably didn't even want to take. And then, between two blurry pictures of soggy centerpieces, came the post that made me put down my mug. It was Mom. Public, no privacy setting, just wide open. A beautiful day for our beautiful girl. So grateful to everyone who helped make this possible, even those who couldn't be there. Family means love no matter the distance. I read it twice. Even those who couldn't be there. Family means love. It was the most passive-aggressive thank you note I'd ever received, carefully worded to make it sound like I'd supported them, just not physically attended. A line crafted to maintain the illusion, to protect their narrative. Because if they admitted the truth that I'd walked away, they'd have to admit why. I didn't respond, but someone else did. A comment appeared under the post, one I never expected. Theo. Sometimes love means not letting people use you. 3 likes, no replies, no follow-up. But it sat there sharp and deliberate, like a knife left on the table at a family dinner. And I loved him for it. That evening, I took my dog for a long walk, even though it was still raining. I let the water hit my face, soak into my jacket, drip down my collar. It didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. When I got back, I dried off and checked my email. There was one new message. From my property manager, subject incident report, 3:07 p.m. Today, attached a still frame from one of the security cameras at the country house. It was Vanessa, in her wedding dress, hair soaked, makeup smeared, standing on the front porch of my house with Jason behind her, both of them yelling at the doorbell camera. They had apparently driven there after their rainy reception, perhaps in a last-ditch effort to find a better venue, or simply to vent their rage at the door that wouldn't open. No trespassing, no damage, but the intent was clear. She'd come to my property on her wedding day, not to apologize, not to make peace. She wanted to prove a point. Maybe she thought I'd show up. Maybe she wanted one final dramatic scene. Or maybe she just couldn't believe she didn't have control anymore. Either way, she left empty-handed. And soaked. I called the manager. No further action needed. Just log it. She laughed. Bridezilla vibes. You dodged a bullet. I agreed. The next few days were quiet. No calls, no messages, just silence again, but this time it felt earned. My unit had a 3-week training coming up in San Diego, and I volunteered without hesitation. Not to escape, to reset. Being back in uniform felt good, clean, focused. I didn't have to explain myself, justify boundaries, or walk on eggshells. The mission didn't care about family drama or old wounds. It just needed you to show up, do the work. Watch your team 6 and mean it when you said, "I've got you." By the second week, I stopped checking my personal phone altogether. One morning, we were wrapping up drills when I saw Sam again, the same guy who'd talked to me about mentoring. He handed me a coffee and said, "You look lighter, new moisturizer," I said. He laughed. "No, seriously, you seem done. In a good way." I nodded. "I am. You think you'll ever reconnect with them?" he asked. "Not the version of them that existed when I left," I said. "Maybe someday if they actually change. But I'm not holding my breath." "Fair." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Later that night, back in my quarters, I finally pulled out my phone, just to check in clear notifications. No voicemails, no texts, no drama. But one message did catch my eye. It was from Theo again. "Theo wedding was a mess. Food got rained out, DJ bailed, guests left early. Vanessa blamed everything on you, said the energy was off because you cursed it or some crap. Just thought you'd want to know you still live rent-free in her head." I snorted. Then I replied, "Tell her I accept her rent payments via Zelle. Market rate." He sent back 5 laughing emojis and a gif of Judge Judy slamming a gavel. I put the phone down and turned off the light. And for the first time since everything blew up, I realized the revenge had already happened. Not because I planned it or executed some elaborate payback, but because I healed and they didn't. The thing about cutting someone out of your life, especially family, is that people assume you're angry, that you're out for revenge, that there's still some heat under your skin, some lingering fire waiting to be fed. But for me, it wasn't about fire anymore. It was about peace. After the wedding, things stayed quiet. No texts, no calls, no guilt-tripping emails begging for a second chance. Either they finally understood I meant what I said, or they were just regrouping to try again later. Honestly, I didn't care. Silence was fine. Silence was perfect. 2 weeks after returning from San Diego, I went out to the country house for the first time in months. The short-term tenants had checked out that morning, and I wanted to inspect the property myself before the next group came in. Not because I didn't trust the management team, they were pros, but because the house had once been part of me. It felt like time to reclaim it, not just legally, but emotionally. The air was crisp when I pulled up, leaves rustling. The front porch clean welcome mat still in place. My security camera blinked its little red light as I stepped onto the deck, still watching, still protecting. Inside, everything looked untouched, better than untouched. The furniture I'd selected with care, the walls freshly painted, the small note on the fridge from the last renters, thanking me for such a peaceful stay. That word hit me hard, peaceful. I stood there for a while in the middle of the living room, the same space where I'd once dropped a bag of pastries and overheard my entire family laugh about how stupid I was. The same space where they'd raised toasts to my bank account, not my character. It didn't feel like that house anymore. It didn't feel like their house anymore either. It felt like mine. After a slow walk through each room, I stepped out onto the back deck with a cup of coffee and just listened to the quiet. No voices, no manipulation, just the wind through the trees and the distant sound of a hawk overhead. I took out my phone, opened my notes app, and started typing. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a message I'd ever send. It was just something for me. You taught me how to give, but you never taught me when to stop. You took kindness as weakness, love as leverage, loyalty as currency. And maybe for a long time I let you, but that doesn't mean I was wrong to love you. It just means I was wrong to think you'd love me the same way back. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even disappointed. I'm just free. I saved it and closed my phone. Later that evening, while driving back into the city, I got stuck in traffic behind a beat-up SUV with a crooked bumper sticker that read, "Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family." I actually laughed. loud enough to startle the guy in the next lane. It was a cliché, sure, but damn if it didn't hit dead on. My family was blood, but loyalty that had to be earned. I'd spent years confusing the two, handing out forgiveness like candy, convincing myself that family meant obligation, that my role was to support cover give, that saying no made me selfish, that having boundaries made me cold. Turns out boundaries are how you find warmth by making room for people who choose to be there, not people who expect to be. That night, I got dinner with Sam and his girlfriend. We laughed about Navy stories, about horrible MREs, about the time our CO lost his temper and ran face first into a steel bulkhead. No drama, no manipulation, just real people who didn't need me to fund their life in order to respect mine. Later, Sam asked, "You ever think you'll hear from them again?" I paused, then shrugged. Probably. People like that always circle back when they need something. And what'll you say if they do? Depends, I said. If it's a real apology, maybe I'll listen. But if it's another guilt trip or ask for money, you'll block them again. No, I smiled. I'll send them my hourly rate. He laughed so hard, he nearly spilled his beer. The next morning, I got up early, went for a run, and stopped at a little cafe near my place. The barista remembered my order. The woman behind me complimented my navy sweatshirt. Nothing dramatic, just small kindnesses from people who owed me nothing and wanted nothing in return. And it hit me. This is what real life feels like when you stop carrying everyone else's expectations on your back. Not loud, not flashy, just unburdened. Before I left the cafe, I opened my phone one last time and deleted the group chat my mom had started months ago. The one where she announced Vanessa's big day. I'd left it sitting there and all that time unread and unresolved. I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need proof of their betrayal or records of what they'd said. I had my memory, and more importantly, I had my clarity. As I walked back to my apartment, sun warming my shoulders, coffee in hand, I realized something simple and permanent. Closure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from no longer needing the conversation at all. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fighting back or proving a point. It's walking away with your dignity, your boundaries, and your peace intact. If you've ever dealt with toxic family drama or had to get revenge the smart way, I hope this story helped you feel a little less alone. For more real-life family revenge stories and military justice moments that hit deep, subscribe now. There's more where this came from.